Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farm, and today we are going to be wiring up this sub panel to take all the 110 volt circuits out of my main panel, move them into the sub panel, and that is a part of a larger project to make all of the 110 volt power in my shop run off of solar. Eventually, I want to run my entire property, the house, the shop, everything off of solar. But we're breaking that down into bite-sized pieces that are affordable and easy for me to comprehend and learn the systems. One thing I want to make clear is that nothing I do here should be considered as electrical training or electrical advice because I am not a certified electrician. But my advice to you is if you don't feel safe doing this, hire a certified electrician to do all your electrical work. I'm just a DIY guy and I'm going to DIY this project. Now, I'm going to go through this very slowly and very methodically because I don't want to make any mistakes. And I have a lot of things I need to understand. For instance, I need to know exactly how much power is being drawn by these circuits. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the majority of all the plugins in here that are typically drawing power. I have a lot of things that are running in here like 24/7. And I want to switch all of those onto these solar generators, these portable power stations, whatever you want to call them, and get everything that needs to stay running in here, running off of these power stations so that I can see how much draw we have and so that all that stays running while I'm doing my wiring because obviously I'm going to have to kill the power. So what we have here are power stations provided to me by my awesome channel sponsors. This is the prototype Blue Eddy Apex 300. It's a brand new unit from them that has some cutting edge features that I covered in another video. I'll put links in the video description where you can get these power stations if you're interested in them. This thing is awesome. I've got the main unit, which has 2.7 kilowatt hours of power, and then another 2.7, so 5.4 kilowatt hours of battery power in this unit that can run 110 or 220. And down here, I have the OPS Mega 300, I believe is the model number on it, and it has 4 kilowatt hours of power. This one's 110 only, but both of these are charged up and I'm going to get these up and running. And they're going to make my project a lot easier. Some of you might be wondering why I'm making a video about doing this if I'm not certified or have the qualifications to train someone. There's a couple reasons. Number one, I basically record everything I do. This channel documents the work I do here on my property. Number two, I want to be fact-checked by the knowledgeable electrical experts in the comment section. Because what I've found out from making videos is that whenever I tackle a project like this, at least probably a dozen people with electrical wiring experience or professional electricians will watch this and they will tell me if I make a mistake and I'll fix it. So if you're using this video to study how to do your system, read those comments and make sure there aren't some important things that get added in. The last thing I want to do after the sub panel is up and running is show you my solar setup and how I'm planning to wire this and talk about my plan for it and kind of maybe show you guys some cool things that these new solar setups can do, but also get some feedback from you on a couple different ways that maybe I could set it up. Okay, so the first inverter is drawing 930 watts. And this battery pack will run that for 3 hours. This one is drawing 1,075 watts. I know I've talked a lot without accomplishing anything, but that's the way I'm approaching this project. I want to be methodical and take steps that will make this easier later. So one of those steps is I'm going to use this outlet tester to make sure every outlet in the shop is currently wired correctly. So when I'm done, if I have outlets that aren't showing up as wired correctly, I'll know that they were already messed up. So that first I want to verify that, and I want to verify which outlets go to which breakers. Because like this first breaker here says plugins west wall. Well, I know where the west wall is, but there are 2 breakers here that just say plugins. And I want to know which plugins are on every breaker. So I'm going to go around and test every outlet, and then I'm going to draw a little map of the shop and identify which breakers go to which plugins. I'll get that done and be right back. Another reason I'm really wanting to get this project done is it's currently 95 degrees outside and it's 85 degrees in the shop. I do not have adequate air conditioning for this space, and I have a new air conditioning solution that I'm installing, but I cannot install it in this box. This 100 amp box is overfilled. But by pulling out about 40 watts of service out of here, then I can add my new air conditioning unit and actually cool this shop off. For my immediate needs, this box is only going to be 110, but it will still be wired as a 220 box. So the way this works is I'll be removing 2 of these breakers from this box and putting in a 220 breaker, a double breaker. And of course, before I do any of that, I will be shutting off power here. To catch you up to speed here, this pink wire is 10-3 with ground. They used to, I thought, have all the 10-2 and 10-3 were all orange, but now if you get the 4-wire 10 gauge, which is 10-3 with ground, it's pink. And either they changed that or I just didn't know. So this line is feeding power to the sub panel. And so these are the power in circuits. These wires right here are power in to run this box. Now you may be thinking that's really small, but I'll explain why. So first, as far as actually wiring it, our 2 hot wires are the red and the black. And obviously I'm messing around in here. The other end of this is not hooked to anything. So this whole thing's dead. So red and black are our 2 hot wires. Our neutral is the white wire. And that white wire, the neutral, goes on to one of these grounding bars. And if you look at the way this is done, your ground bar, this ground bar and this ground bar are all connected. They're connected to this green ground screw. And then those run down the back side, and that's where your electrical current ties into your breaker. The other side of your breaker hits one of your 2 hots. Normally, like this bare ground would connect to the same neutral bar, the same ground bar as this neutral. But in this case, we're not doing it that way because on a sub panel, I've watched a long video about why it is this way and I can't explain it. I can sort of understand it, but not well enough to explain it. But the takeaway here is on this main panel, your ground and your neutral are tied together. On the sub panel, you do not couple your ground to your neutral. So this bar right here did not come with the breaker box. I had to buy that separately, and these 2 screws right here attach it to the physical ground of the box. And that's where our bare ground goes right here. Now, why is this only 10 gauge? Well, the answer is that we are going to run a 6500 watt inverter to power this sub panel. So this panel can only have 6500 watts running through it. If it's more than that, it will trip out the inverter. So we don't want the inverter to act as the breaker, even if it has an overload or a breaker built into it. We want to make sure we never put more than 6500 watts through here. So how do we do that? By running this sub panel off of a breaker over here that is configured to the right amperage. Now, the way I was thinking about it is the 6500 watts is like 56 amps or something like that. So you would want a 50 amp breaker over here. But that's not actually the way it works. So if you put a double 60 or a double 50 over here, you would be allowing twice as much total wattage through the box before you trip that breaker. So if the entire box is meant to process between 50 and 60 watts, that's why we would want a 30 amp double breaker over here. Let's think about this as if we only had 3 wires in it. We had the bare ground and we had the black and the white. We would have hot, neutral, ground, and not have the other hot. These wires would have to be the correct gauge to carry 28 amps. And I think I may have been saying watts this whole time. I meant to say amps. These are going to be a double 30 amp breaker. So if this was just 110 and you just had these wires, it's only carrying 30 at a time. This is carrying 30, this is carrying 30. So if you look up wiring size requirements, 30 amps is 10 gauge wire, and especially 10 gauge is plenty when my run is only a couple feet. Normally, I would take this and just run it right into here, and I would only need this wire to be this long. But the way this is going to work is our grid power comes into this box. Power is going to come out of this box into the solar inverter. Then power will come back out of the inverter into this panel. And if you don't understand why, we'll get to that later. But the point is that in between this panel and this panel, electrically, we need the inverter box that will be mounted over here. So I have to leave enough extra wire to run over here and then back over here. And basically, I only have a couple feet of extra wire here, so I'm not going to cut off any of it. Once all this is done and we get to the phase of adding in the solar inverter and we get it mounted, we'll be cutting this wire, killing everything, cutting this wire and running it into and back out of the inverter. If you look at any of these double breakers, these are your 240 volt breakers. You've got a red and a black. We're doing this exact same thing. And if you look over here, we have this red and black. That red and black will go into a double breaker exactly the same way. And the way I'm going to do that is disconnect these two single breakers, which run plugins on the wall. Those two single breakers, those lines will move over here. But before that happens, I'm going to shut off all the power. I'm going to pull these breakers out. I'm going to disconnect those lines, and we're going to run this power into that spot in that double breaker, and I'll show you in just a minute. One more thing I need to add in here. The reason I have this meter out, the real reason that it's valuable in this part of the process is that I'm about to kill the power and start working in here. But I can't just trust that this breaker actually killed the power. I need to check it. And it's not really like I don't think the breaker is going to work. It's that you're risking your life on this. You need to be sure. So I'm checking right here and right here. We have 120 volts. And then I'm going to kick this main breaker. Should be nothing in here has power, but I have my recording light run off of the power stations. So we're going to check the same place. We get 0. Now the place you could get in trouble here is thinking that this entire box is dead, which is not true. These power wires coming in here are still live. There's 120 right there. So these top lugs are still live, and they will stay live unless I go out to the meter and kill power. I've now done everything I just told you I was going to do, and I want to show my work before we flip the power on and test our circuits to make sure it's all done right. So here we have our 10-3 with ground. That is going into this breaker right here that's currently off. The whole panel's off. But I've also got this breaker off. Now this has our 2 hot wires on 2 different legs. These are 2 separate hots, okay? Those 2 hots are coming over here, and they create our 2 separate hots on this panel. Now your other 2 wires within this 4-wire Romex go into this ground bar, which is tied to this ground rod that goes directly to the ground rod just outside the corner of the shop. So this box is independently ground with its own ground rod, not relying on the house ground rod. And this is not a sub panel off of the electrical panel in the house. This comes directly from the meter. It's a dedicated line from the meter and is not a sub panel of its own. Now the breaker that used to be here, I've pulled it up out of that box, and now it's run into this box. So that comes down here, and we've got our black wire coming into this breaker. We've got our white wire coming down to our neutral bar. And then we've got our bare ground coming to this dedicated ground bar. And these grounds are kept separate from these grounds. In this box, all your grounds come together, and they're all tied together. In this box, your bare grounds are separate from your neutrals, and that is to ground to the case. So now we're ready to kick everything on. And what I want to do is take my outlet tester. When we kick these on, we're going to test and make sure we've got our proper voltage here. I can't imagine why we wouldn't. And then we're going to take our outlet tester and make sure it doesn't register an open ground or anything like that. One more time, the reminder that this video is not for educational purposes. This is for entertainment purposes only. And you should consult a local electrician, make sure that you're meeting code, and read the Dead Sea Scrolls before doing any electrical work. Now we're going to flip on our main breaker. I hear the air conditioner come on. Everything in the shop should now be live. Everything is live except for these two circuits right here. Now we're going to flip that on. And we're going to flip these on. And we're going to get our tester. Going to ground. Check newly installed breaker, 120. 120. We knew that was going to work. Now we should be able to go to this breaker and this screw. 120. This breaker to ground. This breaker to ground, 120. Across these two, 240 volt. Everything seems good as far as I can tell. So now we're going to take our outlet tester and see if we have a good connection at the outlet. From our notes earlier, this line right here runs to the two outlets on the north wall west side. So the northwest corner, two outlets should be running off this. Let's go test those. And then once we see that's working, we'll test the outlets on this side, and then we'll mark our breaker box telling us what these go to. So if you look at the code on top of this little tester, these two lights being on and that light not being on means it's good. Now at this point, I'm going to label these on the cover for this box. Then I'm going to kill the power. And one at a time, we're going to take these other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circuits out of this panel and move them to this panel. And I'll be right back. Okay, the wiring is done. All I have to do is put the cover plates back on. In this main panel, there are no 110 circuits left. We've got this 240 is the air compressor. Then we've got our window AC unit, HVAC. And over here, we've got a welder plug. Then we have this 240 volt that goes to the sub panel. And this 240 volt goes to just a couple lights on my outbuilding. So from this, we've run power to the sub panel. This has all of the 110 circuits. So everything in this shop that is not 220 or 240 volt runs off of this panel right now. And all of it together should add up to about 3,500 watts maybe. If I turned on everything at once, maybe a little more than that. So let me throw these cover plates on and call this project done. And then I want to talk to you guys about the type of solar system that I'm installing. The more people I talk to about my solar install, the more I realize that most people don't understand the capability of these new solar inverters. These are hybrid all-in-one units that do all the thinking for you. The traditional logic is that however much power you're going to be drawing, you have to size your system based on that. And you need to have enough solar panels and enough batteries. Otherwise, when you're not getting enough charging or you don't have enough battery, you'll lose power and either be without power or you'll have to switch your system over through some kind of a transfer switch or something like that. These systems don't work that way. Essentially, the way it works, so if you wanted to install this in your house, you have power coming from your meter, and you have your electric box right here. In between those two things, you could cut that wire and have power coming in from the meter to this box, out from the box to your electrical panel in your house. And Now you're running off of grid. You're completely running off of grid power, but it's going through the inverter. And all we've done is run the wiring in to the panel and that same power back out of the panel. Easy, easy, easy. Then we give the inverter other alternative power sources. We can plug in solar panels. We can plug in batteries. And all of that hooks into this unit. And then the unit is a smart unit. And it's app controlled and all of that. And then you can tell it, I just want to run off of grid power. Or you can say, I want to run off battery power until my batteries get low, and the solar will charge the batteries. And when the batteries get low, we'll run off of grid power. And all of that happens without you doing anything. It's just an automatic switching system. There are all kinds of settings where you can prioritize. Use solar power first, or use battery power first, or whatever you want it to do. And you never have to worry about it. Your power is just always on. Now, if you undersize your system and you can't afford enough solar panels, you can set this system up with no batteries. You can set it up with no solar. There are 100 ways you can do it. But the reason this is relevant to me is, let's say it's going to cost you $5,000 to buy all your solar panels. You can set the system up, get everything wired, and put a third of your solar panels out there because that's all you can afford right now, and have a basic battery. And that's what I'm doing. And it will run off of solar until the solar's not enough, then it will switch over to grid. So if the system I have is undersized and it can't run this shop 24/7, however much solar power is generated by my panels is the amount of electrical savings I have. So at that point, the app might say 30% of your energy usage came from your solar and 70% came from the grid. Say, okay, I'm going to need to double my solar panels and get another battery. You do that and you say, okay, now 70% of power comes from your solar, 30% comes from the grid. Then you have a decision. Am I comfortable there? Am I at the point of diminishing returns? Or do I want to add one more grid of solar and one more battery? And you can just build this system out. And the same thing is true with not just your charging capacity and your battery capacity, but I can run this the way I'm running it now, which is 6,500 watts of 110 power in a sub panel, and then decide, you know what? I want to run the 240 volt too. I want to run the AC system. I want to run my welder. I want to run everything off of this. I just buy another one of these identical inverters and I double it from 6,500 watts to 13,000 watts. And that would be more than enough for everything I do out here. Now, a box like this only costs a little over $1,000. And honestly, this unit right here will run 240 volts. I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to separate out circuits to make sure I don't overload it. But I could run the entire electric draw from the shop on this. The downside is if I try to run the welder and the air compressor at the same time and I've got lights going, and I might trip out the unit and have to reset it. It's basically like having too small of a main breaker if you don't have enough capacity from your inverter. That's why I've decided to separate out and run my 110 circuits off of this, my 240 volt circuits off of grid power. The app is going to tell me how much electricity and how much cost am I saving by using this, and that will tell me all the information that you want. Was this system cost effective? Does the cost of all of the components that I have equal the energy savings, and how long does it take for that to repay? With that information, I can decide, do I want to double my solar, or do I have enough solar and all I need is another inverter, or do I just need some more batteries? By setting up a basic system with the components I have, it's going to answer all of those questions for me. And I was really surprised at how affordable all these components are. I'll put links in the video description to all of the components I'm using for my solar setup. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.